So we'll talk about that, give you a live look into pregame warmups and more. So for that, let's bring in my co-host Anthony Bellino down at the Henry Ford Health System update desk. Anthony, good morning. Good to hear that Matthew Stafford will be on the field today.
Good morning, Tori. That is great news, and I think that no matter what people might say about this Lions football team, one thing that you could never disregard is the fact that Matthew Stafford is as tough as nails. This guy playing, not being able to finish the Green Bay game last week with a rib injury. Let's get some X-rays. Let's make sure those are negative. And you know what? If he's got the, if he feels like he's good to go, he's going to be out there.
Absolutely. All right, Anthony. The players headed off to Tennessee earlier this weekend. Headed out on the plane to get down to Nashville to take on the Titans. So let's take a look at our player departures. Taylor Decker bringing in a little bit of a country vibe there, Anthony. I like it for the trip to Nashville.
Is that Taylor Decker or is that Zorro? I couldn't really tell with the hat he had going on. It's a good look for him.
It really is. Well, these guys are heading off on their very last road trip of the season. The last two games of the year will be back here at Ford Field, and this is certainly a big matchup for them. There's Chase Daniel heading out on the road. He probably was, very prepared to have to play today, but it looks like he will not have to because Matthew Stafford is active.
Well, we'll cross our fingers, and that is why the Lions in the offseason went out to get Chase Daniel, a guy that they know that, hey, in the event of an emergency, if something happens to Matthew Stafford, they have someone who's very serviceable, who can sling the ball around a little bit, as we saw in that Green Bay game as well, and who has experience in this league. And Matthew's talked at length about what having Chase in that quarterback room has meant for him, giving him another set of eyes that he trusts. Maybe he sees things that Matthew doesn't, and their ability to work together. So even though Matthew Stafford might be active today, if I was Chase Daniel, I'd keep the helmet pretty close by, just in case.
Absolutely. All right, Anthony, we've talked a little bit about inactives already, so let's take a look at our inactives presented by the Henry Ford Health System. First up, our inactives on the Titans side of things. Okay, let's go to the Lions inactives because that's where the real news is, because Matthew Stafford is not on that list. Now, keep in mind there are a couple of notable names that are. Three of those at the top there. Wide receiver Kenny Golladay misses another game. He hasn't played since November 1st. Tyrell Crosby missing a game over at right tackle. But Frank Ragnow not being able to play at center after suffering a throat injury last week. That's a big loss for this team.
Oh, it's huge. I mean, you talk about the way that the center really dictates and calls out the schemes blocking and the adjustments that are made at the line of scrimmage. And then to have Frank come out and basically say, and Chase Daniel talked about it, Matthew Stafford talked about it earlier in the week, that I believe, what was the official term? Did they say fractured throat? I think that's one of the first reports that I had read about it. And I was like, I don't even know what that means, but it sounds terrible. But
the injury report was officially a throat injury.
Throat injury.
Yeah, but Darrell Bevell went on to say that they were mostly worried about his vocal cords with that injury.
Yes, and he could eat just fine. He could swallow. He just couldn't talk, and that's a huge issue when you talk about communication across the front five there in trying to protect the quarterback. Not having Tyrell Crosby as well. There's going to be some adjustments on that offensive line. Be very interested to see who takes over. And then, of course, they are professionals, but you always have to worry when there is a backup or replacement at the center position. The center quarterback exchange. It happens every single play on offense, so it's something we'll want to keep our eyes on.
All right, one more name to note on this list, Anthony. Cornerback Darryl Roberts. The lines are already thin at cornerback with both Desmond Trufant and Jeff Okudah now on IR. Both of those guys obviously not available to play, and you lose another guy who's been filling in light of those injuries. Darryl Roberts will not play today, so that's another big loss for this secondary. Obviously, Tennessee's big game is in their run game, but Ryan Tannehill's been playing pretty well too, so this secondary has a big challenge ahead of them.
They absolutely do, and the thing that makes Tennessee so versatile and so lethal on offense is, one, you have Derrick Henry, who is about to cross the 1,500-yard, 15-touchdown plateau in consecutive seasons. That's something that, if he's able to do that, he'd only be the fourth player in NFL history to do so. But what makes them so challenging is to have you have A.J. Brown on one side and Corey Davis on the other side. Those are two very big-bodied receivers, and because the run game is so effective, it opens things up for Tannehill in that downhill passing game that they have, where they can air it out deep, and they have two great receivers that can high point the football and go get it no matter where it's at. So definitely a handful for the Lions secondary today.
Well, while we get geared up for this Week 15 matchup between the Lions and the Titans, there's a lot of other interesting games to keep an eye on around the league. So let's take you to our BetMGM out-of-town preview, where we're taking a look at other games around the league. Now, we've already got 3 games in the books this weekend. That's because 2 of those games were played on Saturday. Anthony, how about the Buffalo Bills clinching their division for the first time in, I think, 25 years? Really exciting weekend in Buffalo.
Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. Seeing some of the fan footage and some of the player footage from their arrival last night back to Buffalo. The Bills Mafia out in full force last night to greet their team. So congratulations to the Buffalo Bills, because it's a franchise that has been through a lot, right? The early 90s when they were going to Super Bowl after Super Bowl, just couldn't get over the hump. Good for them. They're back in the playoffs, and I know that Josh Allen, their quarterback, said the hat says divisional champions, but we want one that says Super Bowl champions. So congratulations to the Bills.
Absolutely. Well, let's take a look at some of these other games as well. Anthony, one I've got my eye on is in the left column there between the Houston Texans and Indianapolis Colts, because of its implications on the Lions' opponent today, the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans are really battling it out in their division, and that's a game to keep an eye on to see who wins that one and how much competition the Titans have.
Very much so. In a huge game for the Titans, because they're looking to clinch their third playoff berth in the last 4 years, and they do own the divisional tiebreaker against the Colts, so they sit ahead of them in the standings. But a very important one for this team today, in the Titans, to keep their eyes on. I'm going to go just to the right of the game that you picked. How about Miami in New England? You would think that this game in December over the last 20 years, it's this is New England all the way. But the Miami Dolphins are right. Yeah. They have a lot on the line down there at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami Gardens. So that will be very interesting to see if the Dolphins can get to win number 9 and potentially even 10 wins by the end of the season. If we go right one more column, you have a divisional game between the Vikings and the Bears there in Minnesota. A game with big implications for both of those teams, sitting at 6 and 7, a game ahead of our Lions.
All right, good stuff on those out-of-town games today, Anthony. But before we go any further in the pregame show, we've got to do our fantasy picks recap and find out who won the Jess Trophy, named for our producer, Jess. So let's take a look back at who we picked in fantasy last week. Anthony, I feel pretty good about my picks. That was an all-star lineup for me.
Oh, yeah, congrats again. I mean, Derrick Henry, 215 yards. You kidding me? We were sitting here, I had the game up on Red Zone, and I'm watching it, and I'm watching Derrick Henry run all over the place. I was like, well, this isn't going to go well for me. I felt okay about the quarterback situation. Maybe Ryan Tannehill would not hand the ball off to Derrick Henry, and I'd be okay there.
He still had 2 touchdowns.
Adam Thielen. I mean, where was he at? I tried to call him after the game to console him. That didn't work out well. But, I mean, if they throw the clip art up there, look at all those touchdowns on the left-hand side.
There it is again.
I just couldn't string the wins together. That's the issue. I couldn't go back-to-back weeks, Tori.
Anthony, you won last week, but I'm putting the Jess Trophy in its rightful place this week. That's on the left side of your screen alongside my name, because that's, I think, 6 wins this season for me, Anthony.
The rightful place. I hope Brian Habercorn, our boss, just heard that. That's a lot of smack talk there, Tori. But well-deserved. Derrick Henry, he was a great choice. What are you going to do? We're going to see a whole lot of him today.
Yeah, hopefully not too much, because hopefully the Lions are able to limit him and not help him have a game like he did last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So we'll see if the Lions are able to stop him, Anthony.
Got to get off the football, got to be able to control the line of scrimmage, and also have to be able to thank Comerica Rise today, their program, for being the presenting sponsor of today's Detroit Lions pregame show. Fans, a reminder to make sure you tune into Fox 2 each Sunday at 10 a.m. for Lions Game Day Live, and then tune on Fox 2 tonight at 11 o'clock to watch Sportsworks and Lions Game Night for complete recap and interviews from today's game. And if you're watching the Detroit Lions from the broadcast region, make sure you tune into your local CBS station to catch today's game, which kicks off at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. With the holidays now underway, the Lions and Pepsi have some special news for you, the fans. You can grab your phone, open up the Detroit Lions mobile app right now, and check out the new virtual holiday filters brought to you by our friends at Pepsi. Now you can even try on Kenny Galladay's custom holiday sweater, so be sure to share these photos with your friends and family all throughout the holiday season. Fans want to see your game face today as well. You have the chance to be featured on today's show by posting using the hashtag DTE Game Face and showing us your game day energy. Don't miss out on your opportunity to be a part of the Lions Game Day. Just post right now using the hashtag DTE GameFace.
BetMGM, an official partner of the Detroit Lions, is coming soon to Michigan, but you can sign up early and get $100 in free sports bets and $100 in free casino bets with bonus code LIONS. Be ready for the action the moment BetMGM goes live. Download the app or go to BetMGM.com to get a total of $200 in free bets with bonus code LIONS. Must be 21 years or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help. Excludes Michigan disassociated persons.
Welcome back into the Detroit Lions pregame show presented by the Comerica Bank Rise program. I'm your host, Tori Petry. We are talking all about the Lions' Week 15 matchup with the Tennessee Titans down in Nashville. So for that, let's bring in Tim Twentyman down at the Henry Ford Health System update desk. Tim, the biggest news this morning is that Matthew Stafford is expected to start at quarterback because he is active for this game. What a feat for Matthew Stafford.
Nobody can ever say that guy right there isn't tough as nails. All right? I don't ever want to hear it. China doll and none of that stuff. It doesn't apply.
No.
Right? You know, obviously he battled some injuries early in his career, but then he went 8 years without missing a start. And to play through partially torn ligament in his thumb, you see it wrapped up there. And then to have some torn cartilage in your ribs. I mean, anybody who suffered a rib injury knows just how painful that is. And so it's amazing. It's amazing to think that he's out there and he's going to play in an NFL game just a week after suffering that injury. So, look, we talked about it all the time, right? The best ability being availability, and that guy just shows it week in and week out. And he looks to be throwing pretty good there too, right? You know, moving around, and they're going to need him today. Obviously, they have a tough task in Tennessee, 9-4. They're looking to win the AFC South. And so, you know, the one thing with Matthew today, Tori, though, is he's going to have some opportunities to make some plays, right? You see the 22 touchdowns there, the 9 interceptions. You obviously can't, you know, turn the ball over and against a Tennessee offense that's really explosive. But when you look at Tennessee's defense, right, 28 touchdown passes, that's the most allowed in the NFL this season. 14 sacks, that's the fewest, right? They're 29th against the pass. And so I think this is a Mike Vrabel defense that sells out a little bit against the run, and there's opportunities, and teams have exploited, you know, some big plays down the field against them. And so to have your quarterback, you know, making your start today, I think is huge, because I think there's going to be some opportunities to make some plays in the passing game against this Tennessee defense.
Yeah, and I think Matthew Stafford has a few more abilities than just availability, but obviously the availability is highlighted today just because of the toughness that he has and all of the injuries that he's played through. Tim, many that probably you and I don't even know the full extent of because of just how tough that guy is. That clip that you guys saw was from earlier this morning down in Tennessee. Now the players will be taking the field for pregame warm-ups, pads and all, in just a few minutes, so we'll keep you updated on that and get you some live looks into the stadium down in Tennessee as soon as we can. So, Tim, just starting off with this game, this offense is going up against a Tennessee defense that has struggled this season. Matthew Stafford is at the helm. He's obviously missing some weapons in Kenny Golladay, but you look at DeAndre Swift, and he's back, you know, after rejoining this team last week, and that certainly is a benefit for this offense. What do you expect to see from the Lions offense in Tennessee today?
Well, the offense is hoping they don't see that guy that much, Jack Fox, the punter, right? Hopefully he just stays on the sideline. We don't see much of Jack, you know, but when Jack's out there, he's obviously good. But, you know, I think it's big to have DeAndre back, right? He brings an element to that backfield that the other guys just simply don't have. You know, I think they each have their own, you know, traits, their own specialty. Adrian Peterson's that power guy, right? He's proven that. Lions have been really, really good in the goal line. Carry-on can kind of do a little bit of everything, but when you look at Swift, he's the explosive guy, in my opinion. You know, I thought last week he knocked the rust off a little bit. Had 11 touches for 50 yards, which I think is good. In somewhat limited action, partly because of, you know, them being down the scoreboard in the second half, but then just wanting to kind of shake the rust off a little bit after he missed the previous 3 games. And so we talked to Kyle Caskey, the running backs coach, this week, and he said he looks back to his normal self after you know, kind of getting a little bit of that rust off last week. And so I would expect maybe we see more like what we saw week 10 in Washington when you know, he carried the ball 16 times, caught it 5 times. You know, we'll just have to see how the game goes in terms of the carries, but I think he's a full go in terms of they're not going to limit him at all this week. They wanted to get him back into the fold last week, and now I think he's ready to roll these last 3 games.
With Matthew Stafford's injury, how much do you feel like they rely on the run game today to take a little bit of pressure off of Matthew?
Well, I think that's a good point by you. I think they do want to, and I think you want to keep it away from Derrick Henry in that Tennessee offense as well, right? So I think it's twofold there. But certainly, you don't want to put Matthew in some compromising positions, right? You want to have good down and distance situations. And so how do you do that, right? You're productive on first and second down, right? 4+ yard rushes, which is, what Darrell Bever considers a good run, in those types of situations on early downs. And so you just got to be productive with it, right? Darrell Bevel wants to be balanced. And so you do that by having some success in the run game early on. And then you're avoiding those like 3rd and 11s, right? Now, we talked about Tennessee. They don't hit the quarterback. They don't sack them very often. The 14 sacks are the fewest in the NFL. But if you get into 3rd and 10, 3rd and 11, 3rd and 12, right, now you can blitz. Now you can play some of those games up front. Now you can pin your ears back. And that's what Detroit wants to avoid today with a quarterback who's, got some sore ribs and who they certainly want to limit the hits on today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when you look at Matthew Stafford's status coming into this game and the injuries that he's dealt with throughout the season and throughout this week, but you also look at that up against a Tennessee defense that, like you said, has got the fewest sacks, in the league. Where do you feel like Matthew Stafford should be expected to perform today? Do you look at Tennessee's defense and say, hey, he's going to have a big day? Or do you look at his injury and say, hey, let's temper expectations?
No, I don't think so. I don't think Matthew would put himself out there if he wasn't able to play like Matthew Stafford, right? And I think you obviously want to limit the hits, right? You're going to step out of bounds instead of, getting an extra yard. You're going to slide, definitely, instead of maybe trying to get 2 extra yards to get a first down and take a hit, right? I think those are the differences maybe you see. But Matthew wouldn't be out there if he couldn't, step back, play action, and throw 150 yards to a receiver that's broken coverage, right? I don't think he would, hurt the team in that way, just to try to tough it out and play. Chase Daniel's a capable quarterback in this league. He's been around a long, long time now. Certainly he's not Matthew Stafford, right? But he's a guy who's seen a lot of football, played a lot of football, and he could step in there and perform. And so I don't think Matthew would put himself in a compromising position just in terms of not being able to make all the throws today. So I would expect him to really not be limited in terms of stepping back and throwing the football, running it and maybe getting rid of it to avoid a hit. Some of those things I talked about, I think we could see different. But in terms of stepping back there and throwing the football, I think we'll see Matthew Stafford, or else he shouldn't be on the field.
All right, so who's he throwing to? Obviously no Kenny Golladay, so which targets do you think he'll be keeping an eye on today?
Well, the two ones that we obviously talk about a lot, Marv, he's had, a really good stretch here since Kenny's been out. TJ's been consistent. But a guy that, I think is one that's kind of emerging a little bit too is Mohamed Sanu, Tori.
Yeah.
He stepped in the last 3 weeks. We saw he had a touchdown on Thanksgiving, and then he's had 2 explosive catches in each of the last 2 games, 20+ yard catches. And so he's a veteran guy. I think he's a guy that Matthew's starting to trust. We talked to Muhammad this week, and I think his veteran status and his ability to, kind of finagle a route, if you will, right? His ability to adjust on the fly to what he's seeing. He's got terrific body language. And, Darrell Bevel, I asked him about Mohamed Sanu, and he said he's just got that innate ability to kind of figure out where he needs to be within a defense in a certain route to kind of find the open spot. And I think he's becoming really comfortable with the quarterbacks in that regard, especially Matthew. And so, he's another guy. I think he's the guy, kind of the third leg of that stool there with T.J. Hawkinson and Marvin Jones Jr. It's kind of those 3 guys that Matthew's kind of turning to. And I think, Muhammad's ability to kind of perform and step in seamlessly over the last 3 weeks, I think that was part of the reason why the Lions felt comfortable letting Marvin Hall go too, because, they wanted to involve Muhammad a little bit more in the offense. And so I think those are the 3 main guys today, and I'll throw Swift in there too with his ability to make plays in the passing game. But like I said off the top, this is an offense that can make some plays in the passing game. Tennessee's giving them up, and so if the Lions can find the right matchups and get behind this defense, there can be some big plays in the passing game today. We've seen that against Tennessee opponents really all year.
All right, well, you guys are getting a look down into warm-ups in Tennessee. DeAndre Swift catching some balls, and the guys with the returner capabilities heading out onto the field. Mohamed Sanu, that you were just talking about, being one of those guys. But certainly Matthew Stafford has some options, even with Kenny Golladay being out. I mean, Kenny Golladay has not played since the beginning of November, so they've really had to learn how to operate this offense without him.
Yeah, they have. And I think, we're seeing Matthew coming
There
out
he
right
is.
there. There he is, right? Trotting out. He's ready to roll. And so we've seen, Marvin Hall step up. We've seen TJ. Obviously, we've talked about him a lot on this show. And I think one of the interesting dynamics with today, too, is just going to be up front and how the offensive line changes. And look, you're seeing Kenny's stats there, right? He was terrific when he was in there. But we talked to him this week, first time in a few weeks, and he kind of admitted he had a little bit of a setback, right? He tweaked. We saw him getting back on the field for practice a few weeks ago, and then there was kind of a tweak there. It wasn't a re-injury, but it just maybe was something where he couldn't move forward as fast as he maybe wanted to. And then we saw him, not, being at practice again. And so it's just something that's kind of lingered longer than the Lions obviously, had hoped. But they're making do without, right? I think the place that you miss him the most is in the red zone. His ability to go up and just that huge catch radius, right? We see so many times he goes up into the back of the end zone and high points that football. And even that first game back this year, I mean, he was, a terrific red zone threat, had a couple red zone touchdowns right off the bat after missing the first couple games. And so I think that's where they've missed him the most. But I think TJ Hawkinson stepped up a little bit and been a pretty good weapon in the red zone too. So, look, they've got enough weapons to score points today, even without Kenny Golladay. It's just, will they be able to, finagle some things up front without Frank Ragnow today and without Tyrell Crosby? How are they going to mix that up? Who's going to play center? And so, look, that's two guys, right? Frank's, one of the best young centers in the NFL, and not having him is going to be huge. And then Tyrell Crosby has stepped in and played really good football on the right side. And so, we'll see what they do. Is it going to be Jonah Jackson moving over to center? Big V's back now. Will he kind of slot in? Where's he going to slot in? He can play guard or tackle. So Lions have some options. They can obviously put Joe Dahl in there at center. So they've got some pieces. And the good thing about this is that all these guys have played this year. The Lions have had certain injuries in certain spots, and all these guys have been able to kind of fit in and play pretty good football. So they've got depth up front. It'll just be interesting to see kind of what five they decide on and how that mix works out.
Well, Tim, we're looking in at warm-ups down in Tennessee. That's Matthew Stafford throwing the football. It's good to see him out there on the field. Those are live looks into warm-ups at the Titans Stadium. Tim, he looks like he's throwing pretty normal to me.
Yeah, he looks good, and it's a left side injury too for a right-handed quarterback. That's the toughest side too, right? And so again, it just speaks to his toughness. I don't think he was going to go out there. I thought it was good that he was limited on Friday, so he at least got out there. He tested it a little bit, and we'll see what kind of pain meds he got. I'm assuming he's on something. I would at least guess with how painful that injury is, and so hopefully that stuff kicks in and lasts for 3 hours. Medicine's amazing. But yeah, I mean, it just speaks to his toughness, right? It's a left rib injury, the worst injury you can have for a right-handed quarterback, and the guy's going to go out there and play. Looked like he had a little bit of protection over that little flak jacket or something. That's probably new, but he's done that in the past. He's had rib injuries before, and so I don't expect him to bother him much. And he's not going to step out there if he can't play and he can't perform like we know Matthew Stafford can. And so I don't expect there to be a whole lot of limitations, Tori, when he's throwing the football today.
Well, that's definitely good to hear. I do think that, you look at a rib injury and you might underestimate how that would affect a quarterback throwing just because, it's not directly involved with the throwing motion. But the throwing motion is a lot of core, and your ribs are right there in your core. Tim, you are a quarterback. How much does that muscle get involved with the throwing motion?
It's everything. It's because we've talked about before, I think, too, how your feet kind of set up your throws, right, and set up your eyes. And it's everything, right? It's moving your feet over and look at it's everything involved. Your whole core is playing the quarterback position and throwing the football. And so if you've ever had a rib injury before, just walking, right? Just turning, sitting, standing up, going upstairs, all that stuff is just really, really, really painful. And so for him to be playing quarterback at the NFL level a week after suffering that injury, it just really speaks to his toughness. And look, it's going to impact him. It's going to be sore and it's going to hurt, and especially when he takes that first hit. But That's why he makes that kind of money, right? That's why he is who he is. Part of it's because of his toughness, and he's shown that over the years.
One more thing to note about those looks into warm-ups that we're getting is that's Joe Dahl snapping the football
Good observation
to him.
there, Tor.
Yeah, we're paying attention to who's playing in place of Frank Ragnow. Obviously, Frank Ragnow not able to go with that throat injury that he suffered in last week's game. Gotta imagine that one is a very painful one as well. And obviously, he played through that to the end of last week's game. But that was Joe Dahl snapping the football to Matthew Stafford. So maybe we see Joe Dahl start at center today.
And that's good. And it'll be interesting, too. And one thing I was worried about this week was just how that center quarterback exchange would go with Matthew not practicing, right? And now you've got a new center. And so that's one of the key parts of that. So I think Matthew getting on the field, at least in a limited portion of practice on Friday, was key so that he could work some of those reps with a new center and then they could get on the same page. Something still to watch, I think, early in the game is that center quarterback exchange, because now Joe Dahl has cross-trained at center, and I think he played there in a preseason game either last year or the year before, but he's never taken a regular season snap at center, and so this is going to be new for him, and he hadn't had a lot of work with Matthew this week. So one thing to watch early is that quarterback kind of center exchange. Hopefully, they're right on point with that, because you don't want to have kind of that mistake be costly early in a football game.
Yeah, great point by you about that connection between those two guys, considering the injuries that they suffered there this week. All right, Tim, we've still got defense to talk about, and we will get to that just after this quick break, so don't go away.
These past few months have been trying, but despite the setbacks, uncertainty, and challenges, one thing is certain: Michigan will recover, and Comerica is here to help our communities rise. Through our COVID-19 relief program, Comerica has donated millions to COVID-19 testing, personal protection equipment, crucial supplies, food banks, and small businesses. And we're just getting started. To learn more, visit comerica.com/rise.
Priorities shift from rush hours to slow breakfasts, from busy schedules to scheduled downtime. And as life happens, shifts and surprises are sure to follow. At Priority Health, we'll always be ready to shift with you, from complicated policies to ones written by humans, from a plan for one to a plan for three. Because your priorities have shifted, maybe it's time your health insurance did too.
Welcome back into the Detroit Lions pregame show presented by the Comerica Bank Rise program. I'm your host, Tori Petry, and we've got Tim Twentyman down at the Henry Ford Health System update desk. We're talking all things Lions Titans today. We talked a lot about this offense. Obviously, the big story there is that Matthew Stafford is active for this Week 15 matchup. However, Frank Ragnow is out, so he will be playing with a different guy that he's getting the ball snapped from today. So a little bit of a change up there on offense, but we've got to talk about this defense. There's the DBs heading out onto the field today. They've got to contend with Ryan Tannehill's arm, but the guys up front have got to stop Derrick Henry. Tim Twentyman, who's going to be responsible for that?
Well, I think it's really all 11. I think those guys right there are going to be responsible for it too, because Derrick, he's going to get into the second level and he's going to get outside, and those guys right there have to be physical with him, right? And that's no easy task, right? 6'3", 247 pounds, running 4.5 at you, and some of those guys are under 6 foot, under 200 pounds, and so it really takes 11 guys to tackle Derrick Henry, and it's going to take a full team effort for sure. Look, he's coming off a 215-yard, 2-touchdown performance last week against Jacksonville. That was his 4th 200-yard game, Tori. That's the most in NFL history. No other back, right? We're talking Walter Payton, Jim Brown, Barry Sanders, right? Nobody has done as much as that guy in Tennessee, and so he's a load, right? He's got 1,532 rushing yards, 14 touchdowns, looking to become the 8th member of that 2,000-yard club, and he's just really, really good. He's just that next, I thought Adrian Peterson, 2012, right, 2013, 14, when he was in his prime, he was as dominant a running back as there's been in the NFL, right? He's that last member of the 2,000-yard club. But I put Derrick Henry and what he's done these last couple of years, I think he's now that kind of next dominant running back. I think Adrian's kind of passed the torch. He said this week he didn't voluntarily pass the torch. Derrick Henry's basically stolen it from him because of the way he's played.
Yeah.
But I think he's that kind of next AP type guy. And so when you're talking about the lines up front, right, obviously the defensive tackles have to be stout. The guys on the edge have to set the edge in the run game. You know, you think about Derrick Henry and this big, strong, pounding back, right? But he's not just between the tackles. I think he's at his most dangerous, really, when he bounces it outside, and he's willing to do it.
Yeah.
He's not just going to roll in there 4 yards in a cloud of dust. He's going to look to jump cut, get outside. He's got 4.5 speed, so, you know, he can run away from people as well. And I think that's where he's got an edge, right? When he gets out, boom, now he's on cornerbacks and safeties. At 6'3", 247 pounds, that's where he's got the edge, right? We've seen that Derrick Henry stiff arm, right? He's made defensive backs look terrible in this league with how physical he can be. So he's more than willing to get outside and get in space against smaller players. And so it starts with the front seven. They just got to try to contain him as much as they can. Just don't give up the big one, right? Like, he's going to get a 4-yard run. He's going to get a 7-yard run. He's going to get a 12-yard run here, but make him earn them, right? Don't give up that 75-yarder we've seen at times this year with this Lions run defense. You just can't give up the big chunks. Make them earn it, right? Tackle with 11 guys and really just rally to the football. I think that's the key to stopping Derrick Henry today.
Yeah, most definitely. There is a reason why they call him King Henry. That is for sure. Well, Tim, you look at who is up there on the front seven for the Detroit Lions. Another spot where the Lions have suffered several injuries there. Guys that they really counted on to stop the run. Guys like Danny Shelton not able to be out there for this team. So who do you think the big responsibility is on to be able to get after Henry? I know it takes all 11, but if you had to pick out a name.
Yeah, well, there's a few. You know, I think I look to the linebackers maybe a little bit more. Obviously,
Okay.
John Pinacini is going to be huge, and so is Nick Williams. But I think when you're looking at just the production the Lions have got from the linebacker position, I think a guy like Jamie Collins Sr. is going to be really, really important today. He plays inside. He plays outside. You see the tackles there. He does a lot of different things, but he's their fastest, most athletic linebacker. And so I think he's a guy, when you're talking about Derrick Henry wanting to get outside, right? He's got to be that line of defense right there to prevent that, right? He's got to be that second level, really good tackler, really good defender today. I think it's really key. You talk about the front seven, it's important there. But when he gets by those 4 guys, you really want to prevent him getting into the third level. So I think those guys, you're seeing the athleticism right there. You can do that, right, Tori?
Oh, yeah. You haven't seen me do that?
Can you just go ahead and flip back like that?
Yeah, I'll do it after the show.
All right, yeah. You don't want to do it on camera? We set something up?
No. I'll show you after.
But, I mean, you just speak to his athleticism, right? And so he's fast, he's athletic, and so that's a good there are no good matchups against Derrick Henry. But when you're talking about the Lions' defense, right, to be athletic, be able to tackle, be able to run him down before he can get to those cornerbacks and safeties, I think it's going to be really, really big for this Detroit Lions linebacker core, led by Jamie Collins Sr., but also including, obviously Jarrad Davis and Jelani and everybody else that's going to fit in there and play. Those guys, to me, have to be really good tackling. This is the Lions team that's allowed the 5th most missed tackles in the NFL, and so you can't have that today against a guy like Derrick Henry. You just really got to be good. And so I think to me it starts with those linebacker guys. They got to prevent Derrick Henry from getting to that third level. They got to protect the second level.
Absolutely. Well, you're seeing a little bit of more of these guys heading out onto the field. Some defensive linemen heading out there, some offensive linemen. Definitely going to be important guys in the trenches for the Lions today. Tim, we talked a little bit about the guys up front, but let's touch on that secondary and who needs to be able to play well in the secondary. We've talked about it on several pregame shows already, the fact that the Lions are missing Jeff Okudah and Desmond Trufant, both those guys now on IR. They still do have Amani Oruwariye. Justin Coleman's obviously back from his stint with his injury, but this secondary is a group that has suffered a lot of injuries.
They have, and another one inactive today, right? Dale Roberts, a guy who stepped in the last few weeks and been pretty good for them, and he's inactive today. And so it's a short-handed staff out there at cornerback. And so it's really going to be up to Amani to play really, really well. And look, we talk about Derrick Henry, right? And my colleague Mike O'Hara, I'm going to have a little teaser here. He's got a great statistic with you in regards to Derrick Henry when he comes up on his segment next. So I'm going to leave that for Mike.
All right.
It's a good one. He was at the desk this morning working it all out. It's a good one. So make sure you ask him about it.
I will.
But when you look at this Titans wide receiver core as well. They got some weapons there too, right? A.J. Brown, 837 yards, 9 touchdowns. Corey Davis, Western Michigan guy, right? 835 yards. And so if you think about it, Tori, I mean, this is a Titans offense that could have a 2,000-yard rusher and 2 1,000-yard receivers.
Wow.
And so it's not just about Derrick Henry.
Right.
Now everything starts and flows through him,
Right.
but his ability and his threat is what opens things up for Ryan Tannehill in play action and for those guys on the outside. And when you talk about Tannehill as well, I mean, geez, there are 3 guys in the NFL that have at least 25 touchdown passes or more and less than 5 interceptions. Those 3 are Ryan Tannehill, Aaron Rodgers, and Patrick Mahomes, and so that's a pretty good group to be a part of.
Good company.
So the secondary is going to be tasked with not only having to come up right and defend a guy like Derrick Henry and be good about all 11 guys getting to him and tackling, but you have to be disciplined as well about that play action and those wide receivers' ability to kind of hit deep and make plays in the passing game. They're big, they're physical, they've got a good catch radius. So it's really going to be on Amani Oruwariye to have kind of a bounce-back performance this week. I thought, Green Bay targeted him a little bit last week and took advantage of kind of a little bit of his inexperience. And obviously, Devontae Adams, that's a tough matchup. But these 2 guys can make plays like that as well. And then, Justin Coleman inside, he's got to be good. And then when you get to the back end, right, when you're talking about Tracy Walker and Duron Harmon and Will Harris, that's the last line of defense. And so those guys have to be really, really good about taking proper angles and really just finding a way to hold on and get Derrick Henry down. It's really going to be all 11 guys when you talk about it, Tori, because it's not just Derrick Henry. This is a Titans offense that can throw the football. They're great on play action. They have a quarterback that can make big plays, and he's been playing really well the last year and a half, and he doesn't turn the football over. So all these guys on defense, it's going to be a tough task for them today. They've really got to play, in my opinion, one of their better games to go on the road and get a win in Tennessee today.
Yeah, absolutely. But a good opportunity for you to shout out Western Michigan there.
Yeah, you gotta throw the alum out there every now and again.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. Tim, thank you so much for joining me on the Detroit Lions pregame show presented by the Comerica Bank Rise program. We appreciate you, and we'll have more with Mike O'Hara coming up in just a minute.
What's up, DLA family? It's Jamal Agnew. This holiday season looks a little different, and while we can't celebrate with you in person, my teammates and I want you to know that we are thinking of you.
The Detroit Lions have partnered with Detroit Lions Academy for more than 20 years, and the staff and students have really become an important part of the DNA of our organization. 2020 has been a difficult year for so many, and in particular, the families of Detroit Lions Academy have really been facing some challenges, and so we decided to partner with Meyer to spread some holiday cheer for the families and staff at Detroit Lions Academy. We typically celebrate the holidays in person, but we still wanted to show up for them and decided that we would deliver gifts right to their homes, and so it was a really unique experience to get out and see the students and their families from their front porches and deliver gifts.
It's been really difficult because they're used to us helping them get on track, be their biggest cheerleader. So this has been really good for our students. They appreciate it. The families really appreciate it because some of them, most of them probably wasn't getting anything for Christmas. So to get a chance to pick what you wanted for Christmas and receive it, just to get the phone calls back from parents, even students calling us back on Teams to thank us for the Christmas gifts, and we like, no, thank the Lions. That made our year.
We were really grateful for the Detroit Police Department to serve as our escorts this year, and it was really fun to see the motorcade of police and Detroit Lions vehicles pull up to the families' houses to deliver the gifts. Supporting the community is really important to the Detroit Lions organization all year round, but in particular the holidays mean a lot to us as an organization, and it's really important for us to give back to the community, especially to the students at Detroit Lions Academy.
It's been really, really good for our students. I feel like it's more than just a partnership, it's like family.
I love that. I love seeing the Lions finding ways to still make an impact in the community, even with all of the limitations. You got Rory masked up and ready to hand out some Christmas gifts. A really special thing to see the Lions doing this Christmas season. Welcome back into the Detroit Lions pregame show presented by the Comerica Bank Rise program. I'm Tori Petry, and we've got Mike O'Hara down at the Henry Ford Health System update desk to talk to us a little bit about the opponent today. Mike, how's it going on this Sunday morning?
Well, after listening to Twentyman, I've never been under more pressure to perform in my entire life. I'll do my best, okay?
All right. Well, I think you've still got some good stuff for us, Mike. If I know anything about Mike O'Hara, I know he's come prepared with a statistic, unless he's crumpling it up and throwing it away. But I think this one, it's still relevant because Derrick Henry is out there for the Tennessee Titans, and that's a guy that we've got to talk about, Mike.
Well, don't you want to save this till last and build up to it? I mean, I thought I felt a power surge here when Tim mentioned it, but okay, I'll lead right with it. You know, we talk about all throughout Matthew Stafford's career about the lack of 100-yard rushers. Derrick Henry, in the last 2 years, has had 4 200-yard games. 200-yard games.
Wow.
Since Matthew Stafford entered the NFL in 2009, as drafted first overall by the Detroit Lions, he's never had one running back gain more than 3 100-yard games. We're talking about 200 yards for Derrick Henry. We're talking about 100 yards.
Yeah.
And Reggie Bush leads with 3, and there are a bunch of guys, including Kerryon Johnson. I wouldn't say a big bunch, but a small bunch of guys, Kevin Smith and so on. 100 yards is the standard for them. 200 for Derrick Henry. No wonder Ryan Tannehill is having a career year when you get that kind of support out of your backfield.
Absolutely. Henry is just built different, and that's a guy that the Lions have got to be able to stop today. Mike, how does this offense for the Tennessee Titans operate? Obviously, it starts with the run and Derrick Henry, but how does it all flow out from that?
Well, it's I think play action and the things you can do with the wide receivers, and I think Tim talked a little bit about that already with Corey Dixon and A.J. Brown. Look, here's a guy he was I wouldn't say let go, but the Miami Dolphins didn't bring him back after 7 years. And he was pretty good there, but not quite what they wanted to build with. And he ended up, in Tennessee last year as a backup quarterback. But things weren't going the way they wanted, and he started the last 10 games and took them to the playoffs. But basically his job was to hand the ball off to Derrick Henry and stay out of the way and don't commit turnovers. And guess what? That took them to the AFC Championship game. But it's a different deal this year, and I think it's the familiarity he now has with this offense. I think it's also, obviously, it starts with Derrick Henry. He has, like Tim said, 28 touchdown passes and 5 interceptions. Is he that much better of a quarterback right now, or did he land in a good spot? Or is it a combination of both? I think it's a combination of both, Tori. And I think you can see that reflected, and I'm going to read this here to you, with Corey Davis, has got 56 receptions, averaging 14.9 yards per catch. A.J. Brown, 51 catches, averaging 16-something. He's got 9 touchdowns, and then throw in the tight end, Johnny Smith. 7 touchdowns out of the tight end. Look at just the way that ball is spread around among those 3 guys. That accounts for almost all of Ryan Tannehill's production. And in my mind, I'm not going to crumple this up. I'm going to respectfully put it here for future use because I might want to use it for my column for tomorrow on DetroitLions.com. But a lot of that flows through Derrick Henry and what he represents and what he presents for opposing defenses. Just one more thing about him. Yeah, he's a big guy, 250 pounds or 245, but he also has speed. He can run and he can maneuver. It's the total package. It's like a runaway truck.
Well, I like that you didn't have to crumple up any notes today, Mike. We saved that one for later. But good stuff on Derrick Henry and on Ryan Tannehill. With that being said, what did the Lions need to do in order to stop those 2 guys and limit this Tennessee Titans offense?
Well, I think a lot of it starts on offense, and thank heavens for the Detroit Lions. They have Matthew Stafford at quarterback today. I mean, look, you're always better with your better players, and clearly Matthew Stafford. And I've said this probably every Sunday this year. Anything good that happens to the Detroit Lions generally goes through Matthew Stafford's hand. And look, I think he's been playing pretty good football lately. I think the entire team has played better under Darrell Bevel the last couple of years. But I think possess the ball, like the way they started out last week. What turned out to be an eventual loss to the Green Bay Packers, but had a long drive to start the game and get a lead. But of course, along came, Aaron Rodgers and just eliminated it in 3 plays and a touchdown. But, play good on defense. To try and control Derrick Henry. Don't let him just take over the game. And whatever that is it holding him to 80 yards or 90 yards or whatever? At the end of the game, you'll know it when you see it. You'll just by the eye test alone, you'll be able to tell if they did a pretty good job. But really command the game and control the game as much as you can and keep it a game. And then, like so often happens with the Detroit Lions under Matthew Stafford, try to win it at the end.
Absolutely. Well, Mike, here's one thing that we saved for you that Tim didn't get to talk about. It's who's on that Tennessee Titans defense. Obviously, they haven't been able to put up too many big numbers this season, but who do you think fans should be keeping an eye out on when it comes to the Titans defense?
Good point by you, Tori. And first, the numbers. They've only have 14 quarterback sacks. That's last in the league, the fewest in the league. And they've given up 28 touchdown passes, the most. That's sort of like, I don't know if there's such a thing as a ratio between sacks and touchdown passes.
There is in Mike O'Hara's stat book.
Twice as many touchdown passes as sacks. So I think, there's a chance to throw the ball on them. And, even though, they've had some injuries and they haven't had Kenny Galladay except for 5 games this year, I think when Matthew Stafford's back there, and assuming he's at fairly reasonably, healthy with that rib injury, I think they can spread the ball around and really do some good things with it. Look, I think they've got a good, solid receiving group, and to me, it's led now by the second-year tight end, T.J. Hawkinson. Not only can he catch the ball, but he can do something after he gets it. So I think there's a chance for the Lions to move the ball against a defense that's just okay. It's pretty good against the run, but something a lot less than that in defending the pass.
All right, how about Harold Landry? What kind of player is he, and what kind of threat does he bring?
Well, thanks for bringing that up because I was talking so much I forgot all about it. But Harold Landry, the third of those 14 sacks, he has 4.5. Pretty good outside linebacker. I don't think they have a star in that group on defense, but he's been pretty good. He's got, like I said, 4.5 sacks. That's more than, if my math is correct, and I think it is, it's pretty close to 1/3 of the sacks they have. But he's been a pretty good ball player for them. But they really don't have. When they were really going good 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when they got to the Super Bowl, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of somebody else. But when they were really going good in their good days, they always had a good, strong defense. I'm not so sure they have that right now.
Yeah, well, Mike, we haven't had enough of you yet. Don't worry. We'll be back with Mike's keys to the game just after this quick break. Don't go away, guys.
These past few months have been trying. But despite the setbacks, uncertainty, and challenges, one thing is certain: Michigan will recover. And Comerica is here to help our communities rise. Through our COVID-19 relief program, Comerica has donated millions to COVID-19 testing, personal protection equipment, crucial supplies, food banks, and small businesses. And we're just getting started. To learn more, visit comerica.com/rise.
As a Marine, I learned resiliency. But when I lost my job, my home, and was living out of my car, I felt like a shadow of that person. Now, I'm working to end veteran homelessness. Nearly 40,000 veterans struggle like I did. But with the help of Rocket Mortgage and Built for Zero, my community has ended veteran homelessness. Yours can too. Join us. Visit ahomeforeveryvet.org to get involved.
Welcome back into the Detroit Lions pregame show presented by the Comerica Bank Rise program. I'm Tori Petry, and we are talking all about the Lions' Week 15 matchup with the Tennessee Titans. The Titans obviously have a lot to play for in this game. The Lions just have 3 games left under interim head coach Darrell Bevell, so we will see what happens here in Week 15. But let's talk to Mike O'Hara down at the Henry Ford Health System Update Desk about what the Lions need to do in this game if they're going to win it. Mike, a tall task for the Lions for sure, considering all that the Titans have to play for today. But if they're going to win, what do they need to do?
Well, I saved this sheet of paper for a reason. I didn't crumple it up. And look, it doesn't take a genius to figure this out. Even I figured it out. Really, it all starts with what you can do against Derrick Henry. Look, he's coming off last week a 250-yard rushing performance against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Not that they're the greatest defense in the league, but he also had 212 earlier in the season. So what they're really talking about there down in Nashville is getting to 2,000 yards, and he has to average something like 150-some yards per game for the rest of the season to do it. We just don't want him to get to 2053 that Barry Sanders had in 1997. You can get to 2052. That's okay. Keep away from Barry, okay, because I want him to stay right where he is. But that, to me, Tori, I think that's elemental. Do the best job you can on Derrick Henry. And then take care of the rest. I just don't think, and regardless of what the stats are for Ryan Tannehill, I don't think he can beat you by himself. But we'll have to wait and see that. But to me, that's job number one. And the second part of it is, and I think I probably said this the last 2 weeks, play all 60 minutes.
Right.
That has been, Darrell Bevel's theme since he got here and took over as the interim head coach 2 games ago. And I thought they've done a pretty good job of that. There's been just a certain flow and pace and to the game since he took over. They've been in games. I think they've competed right to the end, and I think do that again, and you've got a chance. Look, I think it's, like you said, a tall order. I think it's a very tall order, and the Titans are favored, by more than a touchdown, for a good reason. But the Detroit Lions could make it a game.
Well, the Titans are playing for first place
Correct.
in their division. That's what they're trying to get at. The Lions are fighting to finish this season strong after obviously playing to a point where the team had to decide to part ways with the head coach and GM. So that's where the Lions are at versus where the Titans are at. But Mike, we've talked about it over the last couple of weeks. The thing that has impressed me most about this team under interim head coach Darrell Bevell has been the energy that they have brought for all 4 quarters. We saw them bring that again last week against the Green Bay Packers, and Mike, you and I talked about it on the One Pridecast presented by MGM Grand Detroit, is that, even though they lost that game, they showed a whole lot of fight, and that was impressive.
Yeah, and right there, to that last onside kick, and look, did Miles Killebrew recover? I don't know. The officials didn't give him the call and all that, and it was what it was. But the fact is that they were in there to the very end with a chance to do something. There was another call that went against them before that, and coincidentally or ironically, whichever way you want to put it, Matthew Stafford wouldn't have hurt his rib. If that was by Marvin
Right.
Jones Jr., would have been called a catch, which I think it was a catch. I
I'm
really
with
do.
you.
Is it a 2-0 vote for a catch?
It's a 2-0 vote.
Then we can get rid of this. Once a week.
There we go. There's the classic Mike paper crumple there. All right, I think that does it now that we got the paper crumple in there, Mike. Thank you so much for joining me on the Detroit Lions pregame show.
I'll try and do it earlier next week.
All right, guys, we will be back with a little bit more in our pregame show in just a little bit. We've still got to get to our fantasy picks, so stick around.
To honor all the brave men and women stationed around the world who protect our freedom here at home, the Detroit Lions and Kroger invite you to submit nominations for your hometown heroes. Submit your nominations today at DetroitLions.com/hometown heroes for a chance to be honored this season.
We would like to again take this time to thank the Comerica Rise program for being the presenting partner of today's Detroit Lions pregame show. Make sure you tune into the home of the Detroit Lions after today's game, WJR AM 760. You'll get all the latest info from the game, plus hear from Coach Bevel and many of your favorite players as well. That's the Lions postgame show on WJR AM 760, the radio home of the Detroit Lions. All morning, we've been asking fans to submit their photos showcasing their game day energy using the hashtag DTE GameFace, and you can see fans from all over are ready and set for today's game. Thanks again to all of our fans who are part of today's DTE Game Face.
I love that blue collar filter there with the hard hat and the dirt on the face. I love it. I'll have to try that one out after our pregame show is over. But Anthony, you know what time it is right now. It's time for our weekly fantasy picks. I've been winning that Just Trophy over the last few weeks here. You got one last week, but we'll see if you can do it again next week. So Anthony, who are you taking at quarterback in fantasy?
All right, let's go to the quarterback position. Go ahead and flip the card. We're not going to make any surprises here. I'm going Lamar Jackson. Big game today against Jacksonville. The Baltimore Ravens, they had a big win against the Cleveland Browns where Lamar and company put up a whole bunch of points. I'm expecting sort of the same sort of result, a 40-plus point performance tonight by the Ravens.
Pretty exciting game from those Baltimore Ravens last week. I'm going out in Arizona.
Oh boy.
That quarterback out there, Kyler Murray. I'm taking him against this Philadelphia defense because Philly has allowed a league-leading 364 rushing yards to opposing quarterbacks, and we know that's Kyler's strength, so I'm going Kyler Murray. Who are you taking at wide receiver?
Wide receiver, I'm going to go over to Kansas City. I'm going to find one of Patrick Mahomes' favorite targets, Tyreek Hill, taking on New Orleans. A very important game for both teams when it comes down to the playoff seedings and where New Orleans Saints want to be. A lot of people think that the Chiefs are just going to roll in there. I think it's going to be a high-scoring affair for Kansas City, and hopefully Tyreek Hill is the recipient of a couple Patrick Mahomes bombs today.
Oh, maybe that's your hope. That's not my hope, though, Anthony. I'm picking a guy that we have not selected yet on our pregame show. I'm going with Brandon Ayuk out in San Francisco. They're taking on Dallas this weekend. That's a little bit of Arizona State love for you. That's my Pac-12 team, so I'm taking Brandon Ayuk this week. The Cowboys are allowing the second most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers, so I like him this week. Who you got at running back?
Your Pac-12 team, is that because your Florida Gators threw a shoe and got them booted out of the college football playoff?
Okay, all right.
Okay,
don't make me wrap this show up right now.
Jess is over here just giggling too. Running back, I'm going to go Alvin Kamara because, once again, it's that Saints-Chiefs matchup. There's going to have to be a lot of offense, a lot of points scored on the board. Chiefs defense has not been as good this year as in previous years, and with Drew Brees and his health situation, I expect the Saints to lean on Kamara a lot today.
All right, I'm still working through forgiving you for that one over here, Anthony. At running back, I am going with Jonathan Taylor in Indianapolis. I think that he can put up some yards on this Houston defense because they're allowing 5 yards per carry. They're giving up the second most fantasy points to opposing running backs. So that's who I've got at the running back spot. But now let's take a look at who we've got for our Lions of the week. Who you got, Anthony?
I'm going to go with your and Tim's favorite. I'm going to go with T.J. Hawkinson. I just think that whether Matthew Stafford plays a bulk of this game, the entire game, or doesn't see a single snap today, TJ's effectiveness, not only blocking but receiving as well, it's going to be a key point if the Lions want to have a chance in today's ball game, especially a lot of those medium routes where you're not really stressing your quarterback to really ask him to throw the ball down the field a whole bunch, a lot of underneath stuff. Big day for TJ today. Not
a bad selection by you, but I think mine is pretty good as well. I'm going with DeAndre Swift. Last week was his first week back in the lineup after the illness that he suffered and the concussion that he went through as well. You know, he was kind of back in there in a limited fashion last week. Obviously, the Lions were down as well, so they had to throw the ball quite a bit. I'm thinking that DeAndre Swift takes some pressure off of Matthew Stafford and his arm today because he is dealing with that injury. So I'm selecting DeAndre Swift as my Lions pick for this week. But Anthony, we're going to have a little bit of fun as well and pick something that's not football related. You know, back in Thanksgiving, we did a little bit of a favorite Thanksgiving side. So since this week is Christmas, we're going to do our favorite holiday cookie. Anthony, who are you going with?
Well, after taking the Thanksgiving Day trophy with my cheesy potatoes, I'm going to go, and I literally...
You got to claim some sort of trophy, Anthony.
It's the only one I get. I can take the food trophy because I'm going to win this one too this week, I think. I described it as the peanut butter one with the Hershey Kiss in the middle. Now, there's a couple of... That's the one, the peanut butter blossom, I think. I don't know if the blossom's the right word for it, but whatever. That thing right there on the screen, I could eat that television screen right now. Those are delicious. I'll take a dozen of them.
Do you even know those cookies? You didn't even know what they were called. I'm the one who told you they were called peanut butter blossoms. I'm going with a more traditional option over here. I'm going with sugar cookies, but not just any sugar cookies. They're sugar cookies with icing and Christmas-colored sprinkles on them. Very important detail for me. So we'll ask Twitter again this week, Anthony, which one is the better selection. I think that I'll win this one.
Debatable. That's all I'm going to say. But the Christmas cookies, right? Holiday-themed cookies, those are great. Everybody gets together under, most circumstances, non-COVID time. So, yeah, hopefully everybody is, baking all the goods. And we do accept baked goods here on this show. So if you'd like to drop some off, Tori and I are always hungry.
I love it. Well, Anthony, thank you so much for joining me here on the pregame show presented by the Comerica Bank Rise program. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to you. We will talk with you as the Lions continue their season next week break the day after Christmas. So, Anthony, we appreciate you as always.
Hey, happy holidays to you as well, Tori.
All right, guys, let's wrap up the show here today with our Ford starting lineup. Starting with the defensive line, we've got Austin Bryan at defensive end, Nick Williams on the interior, along with John Penasini and Romeo Aquara on the other side. Then at the linebacker spot, we've got Christian Jones, Reggie Ragland, and finally, Jamie Collins Sr. Let's take a look now at your defensive backs with Tracy Walker, Justin Coleman, Amani Oruwariye, and Duron Harmon. All right, guys, that does it for our pregame show presented by the Comerica Bank Rise program. I'm Tori Petry. Make sure you join us for this game if it's broadcast in your local area. Remember, this week's game is on CBS now instead of Fox. So flip that channel over to CBS and join us to watch this Lions game, then come back right here after the game for our Detroit Lions post-game show. We'll see you then. Enjoy the game.